Greetings and salutations, this is Jarsz, the biggest YouTuber ever! And good morning, Jarsholes! Welcome to another edition of the Daily Jarsz for the 23rd of November, 2023. It's Friday Eve, as good a reason as any to fill up our world with corgis. Members, let's see some corgi emojis in the chat. A special shout out to those who clicked subscribe yesterday. Welcome to the world of Jarsz. I hope you enjoyed the show. Today we have a very special guest, Dave McKeegan. Dave is a professional photographer and is a successful YouTuber with nearly 100,000 subscribers. About a year ago, he went insane and started looking at the sordid world of flat Earth, hopefully for the laughs. But before we introduce Dave, I want to thank my YouTube members. Thanks once again for all that you do for me, and thanks for being part of the huge Jarsz movement. Let me not make excuses for still not having updated the role, and let me personally recognise the members who joined thanks to Siggy Sigwald's generosity last week. Armageddon's Fire, Peter Harrington, Siggy Sigwald himself, Professor Phil Bell, Phil.org, Zeo Gold, A Madman, Clarence AS2, Rich901, Tinker Phil, Igor, Mr. Unite, For the Chill Wind, Edison Carter, Facty, Dart, Peter Noddle, Didgeridoo, Dr. Nimrod, Lady Moonweb, Paul's Heart Attack Support, and Doc C. No facepalm warning today, so give a big, huge ass welcome to Dave McKeegan.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, we really wanted Rusty.
Yeah, he's here.
I, and I'm sure others. Oh, hang on. No, let me go back a bit. I have to ask, whatever possessed you to get into the idiotic world of flat Earth?
Yeah, I asked myself that same question.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. I kind of knew about flat Earth and was arguing with people about it long before I was making YouTube videos on the topic. I was just doing it on Facebook. And then it was sort of, September last year, I think it was. I just, for a giggle, I'd done a couple of videos about the moon landing conspiracies, and I thought I'll do one about flat Earth as well for a laugh. And then, that just took off.
Yes, it's hard to believe that they're the same species, isn't it? That anyone could be so, a flatzoid's a perfect example, to be so ingrained in a certain point of view, despite all evidence against it. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I think you get some who are genuinely just, they only understand half the picture, and they are actually trying to work things out for themselves. STST, Ranty, Rachy, all prime examples of that. But then you get, some like Flatzoid who will not only ignore the evidence, but will actively try and come up with any excuse possible to explain it away, regardless of how ridiculous that excuse is.
We'll be seeing an example of that later on. I, and I'm sure others, are really impressed with your level of knowledge, not only in your field of photography, which is a big advantage to our community, you bring that, but in other subjects as well. And also how thoroughly you cover your subjects that choose to take on. I mean, from my point of view, if a first watching your video, within 30 seconds, he should be thinking, oh, I might be wrong about this. And then you go on for 20 minutes to make it absolutely clear that they're wrong.
I don't think any of them actually watch the videos all the way through. I think they just come on and start commenting, because very rarely do flat earthers comment about the actual topic of my videos. They just comment about everything else but the topic of the video.
Yeah, folks don't listen to learn, they listen to to argue back, don't they?
Yeah, but they don't even argue about the topic of the video. It's like they just see a video about topic X, so jump straight in and go, right, I'm going to comment about topics Y, Z, and G.
They regurgitate their pre-programmed response, and they call us brainwashed.
Yeah.
So it seems to me you go into these things so thoroughly. How long? It's a hell of a lot of work. How long would it typically take you to do such a video?
It depends on the video. If it's a topic that I already if it's a topic that I already know quite a bit about, then it might take me 3 or 4 days of putting the video together. Some of the videos, they need a bit more research. If it's something I'm fairly familiar with, or I need to find pieces to put together. I mean, that the video that I did with Wally was about 3 weeks work, I think, on and off behind the scenes, the two of us just finding all these bits and pieces.
Yeah, it was quite an amazing video. That we'll look at that later on, just briefly, because I don't want to spoil it for people. By the way, all the videos we're looking at today and a link to Dave's channel are in the description of this video, so you can find them yourself. And the videos we're going to look at are about flat Earth misconceptions. That's the main videos you do. What's the most ridiculous flat Earth misconception that you've seen so far?
I think they're all as barking as each other. I think for me, the ones I like are the ones where, when you actually stop to think about it, they don't really like relative density and electrostatics as arguments for gravity. And the more I sat and thought about them, I was like, they would still work on a globe. They wouldn't stop anything. If you're saying things travel towards the floor because of density, it wouldn't matter what shape the Earth is. It doesn't actually. You're just arguing for the sake of arguing now.
Pretty much. They love to argue.
Yeah.
Who's the silliest flurf you've encountered so far?
Oh, I think they all have their special traits, for one reason or another.
It's a bit like asking how long's a piece of string, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. I think there's no one in particular that stands out. I think they all have, their own. Geez, we could do entire live streams about each and every one of them, and some of the things they say. I mean, you only have to look at the top left awards as to how bad some of them can be.
Are there any, do you think, can be educated back to sanity?
I think it's difficult. I think the ones that are like the main ones that most people know, I think they're either in it for other reasons than they actually think the Earth is flat, or they are so far gone that no amount of logic is going to bring them back. I think it's more their viewers are the ones who could potentially benefit from it.
Yeah, it's. Those who are genuine truth seekers will find the truth. SDSE, Ranty, Rachy. It's a bit like coming out of a religious cult to some extent. I don't think Flat Earth is a cult. It's cult-like, but it's not a cult in itself. But yeah, they tend to be brainwashed into a certain frame of view and a way of looking at things rather than looking at things objectively.
Yeah, I think they start with the bedrock of everything's a lie, so therefore Earth must be flat, and then they'll just find whatever excuse they can come up with to fit with that. I've not been, even though I've been around flat Earth for quite a few years. Excuse me. The YouTube side of it, I never really followed until I started making videos about it. So STST and Ranty by that point had already switched. So I didn't see their transition, if you like, back to reality. But Rachy, I kind of, for quite a while, figured that she was the kind of person who was, because she kept adjusting her, what she was saying. She kept adjusting her mindset to try and find a valid excuse, a valid explanation for all these different things, and eventually led her back to a globe, whereas everyone else just kind of they try so far to come up with an excuse, and then once they reach a dead end, they just stick their fingers in their ears and start screaming.
Yeah, I think in Rachel's case, she's not all the way there, but that's her default position, that it's a globe now. Yeah, she feels she's seen things off the flat Earth that are still convincing to her, but seen a lot more for the globe that's convincing. But that to me is a bit like the cult thing I was saying, that she's been sort of indoctrinated into thinking certain things in certain ways. But she'll figure that out, I think. If she's come this far, she'll go all the way, I'd say. Rusty is the strangest looking corgi I've seen. Does he do anything other than sit in that chair?
He's not a corgi. He's a baby.
Wait, there are dogs that aren't corgis? There he is. You just have to look at him when he comes over. Oh, there you are, Rusty. You're the star of the show.
Yes, people keep asking, how do I get him to sit with me? And he doesn't. He lets me sit with him.
Yes. All right, so let's have a look at some of the topics you've looked at and how thoroughly you went into them. I'm going to speed them up for time, and unfortunately, I have to cut out your sponsors because as much as I like that particular sponsor, I'm not sponsored by them, so I can't really show that. Like I said, all links to Dave's channel and all the videos I plan to look at today are in the description of this video. So this first one is about atmospheric lensing. I want to play two clips. So let you introduce yourself.
Now, whilst flat earthers can't agree on a complete flat Earth model, they do seem to have a general consensus that the Earth is a flat plane and that the sun and moon circle above it whilst maintaining a fairly constant altitude, although they can't agree on what that altitude is. The distance from the North Pole to the South Pole is about 11,800 miles, which would put a flat Earth at around 23,500 miles across. Now, if the sun and moon were hundreds of thousands of miles high, then they should be visible high in the sky 24/7, which obviously they aren't. Which sort of forces the claim that they are in fact much closer to the Earth, with general distances given of only around a few thousand miles.
The astronomers now teach that the sun's distance from the Earth is from 92 to 93 million miles, whereas it is proved to be under 2,400 miles.
Where has it been proved? That's the bit I don't understand. I love how they make these statements and then don't support them.
Yeah, I've never had an explanation as to where it's been proven, and people say 3,000 miles. Some people say it's in the clouds. And
yep. Oh, by the way, where's Wally says hi? He's in the chat right now.
Oh, the legend himself.
Let's keep going. We got a lot to get through.
Even around 3,000 miles high, though, the sun should never set. If the sun were above one edge of the flat Earth and you were at the other, 23,000 miles away, the sun should still be 7.5 degrees above the horizon. When the sun's above the equator, and if you're on the equator too but directly opposite, the sun should be 14 degrees above the horizon at its lowest point, rather than having gone behind the horizon 6 hours previously. The other big problem, though, is what their angular sizes should be doing. When we view an object, we see an angular size, which is the angle across the object that we see based on its physical.
I must say, what's wrong with your body here? I thought you were a good photographer.
Crap at Photoshop.
Photoshop? Oh, we don't use that. Only Flurfs use that.
Physical size in relation to its distance away. The physical size of the object won't change, but as we change the distance, then the angular size is directly affected. So if we have an object that is 5 degrees wide when it's 10 meters away, and we double the distance to 20 meters, then the angular size will halve to 2.5 degrees. If you're in Egypt, when the sun is at high noon, it would be 3,000 miles away from you straight up and has an angular size of 0.5 degree. 6 hours later, when we see it set, it's now 7,000 miles away across the Earth's surface, meaning the sun would then be 7,600 miles away from you, which is 2.5 times further than it was at noon. And so it should appear to be only 1/5 of a degree in angular size, but it's not. Both the sun and moon's angular size remain constant from one horizon right overhead and to the opposite horizon.
So to me, this is really obvious stuff, but Flurfs just ignore it. It's just bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, this is where they get to the, okay, I'll try and come up with an excuse to, something to try and make it work.
They start from position, this must be wrong, even though anyone can do this, which makes it objective.
Mm-hmm.
And they make up a story. That's why they're hilarious, because that story is always funny.
Yeah,
how it denies reality. I think I'll jump ahead to later in this video, where you start talking about atmospheric lensing in particular.
appears smaller. And this is where the shape of the flat Earth atmosphere becomes a problem, because we know that air density reduces with altitude and the drop is proportional to the rise in altitude. Hence, people can work out what their elevation is above sea level anywhere on Earth based on their air pressure. But if the Earth were a flat plane, then the changes in density of air are also flat, which, yes, would cause slight shifts in the positions of objects when they're at very low angles, but would have absolutely no effect on the angular size of an object because all of the light is being refracted by the same amount. To have any chance of magnifying an object with the atmosphere would have to have a convex curve to it. But we know the air pressure gradient is proportional to the altitude above sea level, which means the sea level would also have to have a convex curve to it as well. That's all before you factor in problems like that to create a 2 to 3 times magnification requires refraction levels far more drastic than atmospheric pressure gradients would allow. Mind you, the sheer presence of a pressure gradient at all causes problems for flat Earth, but that's a whole different topic. Now,
I love the graphics you put in here. They're very clear and explain the point well. Do you do your own editing, or have you got someone doing that for you?
No, I put it all together myself.
Wow. Now you're a busy bloke. You got your own
yeah,
business, you've got a family, and you're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's why the videos could take like a week to put together in the end.
I don't know how you got the energy for it.
4 hours of sleep.
Well, yes. What, you got a young baby or something? That helps you.
Yeah.
We've got another minute of this, and then we'll jump to the next video.
Few people have actually made the claim, incidentally, in previous videos, that the moon does actually change in angular size, appearing larger at the horizon. This is actually false, though. This is, in fact, an optical illusion. It's often referred to as the moon illusion, whereby our brains are tricked into thinking that the moon looks bigger when it's near the horizon. But in reality, if you measure its angular size when it's near the horizon, either by photographing it or even just holding up a coin arm's length that almost covers the moon, and then repeat it later when the moon is high in the sky, it's still the same angular size.
Yeah, and you didn't actually explain it specifically, but the reason that it's an optical illusion is because when the moon's closer to the horizon, you've got reference points to look at, whereas when it's up in the sky, you don't. And yeah, the example you gave, hold a coin at arm's length or something like that, or take a photo, you can see that it actually doesn't change in size. Well, not significantly anyway.
Yeah, I get quite a lot of people still now commenting, saying, the moon does look bigger at the horizon. It's like, it's not.
Well, that was the point you
think
made.
It's bigger.
Yeah. All right, so we move on to the next video. This is so that was the first misconception for FLIRS, was that atmospheric lensing's a thing, and I think you pretty much destroyed that. Now we're going to have a look at this blue screen thing, which people use as proof that ISS is faked, blah blah blah.
I've often seen people claiming that NASA fakes their ISS onboard videos, and that they do this by using green screen techniques. And one video that often gets cited as proof of this is this video from February 2016 of former US President George H.W. Bush visiting the Johnson Space Center in Houston and talking to some of the astronauts who were on board the ISS. However, what people pick up on from this isn't actually really anything to do with this video. It's that as Mr.
I just wanted to point out all the hairs on your shirt in that shot. Rusty must have been all over you. Yes.
Bush is being pushed through mission control, we can see on one of the screens behind him a view of astronaut Tim Peake standing in front of a blue screen. Now, Tim was on the ISS at this time. He was on Expedition 46 from December 2015 until June 2016. In reality, what we're seeing here isn't even close to being used for some sort of special effects trickery. People are just jumping to that conclusion purely because Tim is standing in front of a big blue square space.
No. It's very much clutching at straws from the flat earthers, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Oh, no. A square space, not square space.
Oh, hang on. This is where I'd jump over the sponsor. As much as I like that sponsor, but they're not paying me, so I can't show that. Here we go. If you want to see that sponsor, go to Dave's video and give him a view.
This isn't a CGI screen. A green screen or a blue screen creates a solid color backdrop behind actors to make it easier to add special effects and change the background. Editors can simply select the green or the blue within the footage and then replace it with something else, such as a new background. Without a screen, it would be a very cluttered background in the video that you'd have to go through very, very carefully and select what is all the background versus what is the person or stuff that you want to keep, and it would be very time consuming. So recording in front of a screen is much easier for adding special effects. Except a friend of mine, Where's Wally, did a video looking at some of this a few weeks ago, and he found the actual broadcast video that Tim Peake was filming, and the screen is still visible. And the thing he's doing in this video is an experiment where he spins a green plastic ball around on some string and then lets go, and shows that the ball flies off in a straight line once the centripetal force of the string stops. And the ball travels into parts of the image outside of the blue screen. So the ball is unlikely to be CGI, and doing it in front of a blue screen is pointless if the things you're filming, like the ball or the person themselves, keep going off the screen. And whenever you watch VFX videos that show these screens being used during filming, the screens are always edited out in the final film. So straight off the bat, the fact that the screen is still there and the ball and Tim go beyond the screen show that this isn't really a screen for CGI purposes anyway. Now, in reality, what this screen is part of the experiment. You'll notice not only are there grid squares, but they're labeled along each axis from 0 to 10. This is done so the grids can be used for anyone watching it to use them as a reference for taking measurements and see how objects are actually behaving. This isn't the only experiment that Tim Peake did either. This is one of several videos he did for Astro Academy. Some of the other experiments included showing spring oscillations while it's floating and a ball slowly looping around a track and yet not falling to the ground. You know, the kind of experiments that can't really be done here on Earth.
And I think that's another good example of how thorough you are in your videos. You not only just completely debunk the fact that it could be used as a green screen type of thing, but you've shown what it's actually used for, and not just one example of that, plenty of them. It's just brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant use.
I get a bit carried away at times.
Well, yeah, but that's what I was saying earlier. You know, after 30 seconds, anyone watching this should be saying, "Oh, that isn't what I thought it was. This Dave's explained it to me," and then you go on and absolutely cover that in facts. So that there's just no doubt whatsoever. Well, there shouldn't be any.
Well, I kind of work on a theory that, like, I think the first couple of videos I didn't go quite so in depth with everything, and immediately kind of noticed that flat earthers will just ignore the bits you're talking about and start trying to find other bits. So I just thought, well, if I make sure I cover all the bases now, they can't really do anything about it later.
Yeah, I try to do that in my videos, but I never do it. They always come up with something, don't they?
Yeah.
Wes Woolley says people will always come away from Dave's video having learned something.
That's one of the things that kind of keeps me going with this, is the fact that I know that it's sort of, it might not be converting flat earthers, but people are still finding it useful. And I've noticed now some of the arguments I've presented in videos, I've seen people now commenting themselves against flat earthers, like the whole density would work on a globe sort of argument. You know, people are now using that against flat earthers as well. So it's all beneficial.
A lot of it, you can just, if someone's making that argument with you, you can just easily, here's a Dave McKeegan video that covers that, and that should be all they ever need. Of course, Fliffs never watch anything that doesn't come from their papa Fliffs, but as you said, it's not necessarily the hardcore cases that we're trying to help. We're trying to help the people on the fence, people like Rachie, SCSC, T, and Ranty, and so on.
The people that are about to fall in the rabbit hole.
Yeah. All right. On to the next one, which is about photography. It's particularly Flatzoid's problems with it, but we'll see how we go.
60 meters, doesn't matter.
So all of this began a few weeks back when Flatzoid did a live stream about a quite well-known photograph amongst Flat Earth. This photo, taken by photographer Kevin Jackson in 2021, taken from Southport Beach, looking towards Blackpool with the hills of the Lake District in the background. This photograph actually converted at least one Flat Earther, Ranty, who realised that as we know the heights of Blackpool Tower and the hills in the background, and we know their respective distances from the photographer, then if the Earth were flat from that location, the angular size of the mountains would make them appear taller than the tower, and that the reason they don't is due to the curve of Earth. This photograph said Flat Earthers scrambling for a viable explanation that was based on Flat Earth, with Flatzoid's latest explanation being that apparently it's caused by lens compression and that zooming in causes the background to drop down.
Okay, so based on this, did changing a lens cause the Earth to curve more?
Yeah.
Weird. So using a higher millimeter lens, like a larger focal length, causes more foreshortening, so more occultation due to the forced perspective, therefore giving the appearance that things are going over a curve.
Which is odd, because supposedly zooming in also pulls objects back from beyond the horizon as well. I don't know, maybe lenses are conscious beings that are feng shuiing each photo. So in this video, I'll break down why lens compression isn't really a thing anyway, and why zooming in doesn't magically drop the background down. And don't worry if you're...
And yes, that's where I change over because of sponsors. Here we go. So this is the meat of it.
Photography online is a whole bunch of experts, not just one guy. They're a team of experts. They are really good at what they do. So if you're saying they're wrong, then there's something wrong with you.
I didn't reset this one. I've got the timestamp though. I wonder who your sponsor is.
From Photography Online, which is demonstrating how focal length can change the look of a photograph. Now, this often gets referred to as lens compression, but in reality, lens compression doesn't really exist. It's merely a combination of perspective, angle of view, and depth of field. that the longer the focal length is you're using, the tighter your angle of view becomes. A bit like holding a cardboard tube up to your eye, except with a lens, it expands the bit that you can see to completely fill your vision. It involves perspective in the sense of the difference in relative distances between you, your subject, and the background. I.e., if you're 2 meters from your subject and the background is 1 meter behind them, then you're 3 meters away from the background, and the subject is relatively closer to the background than to you. But if you were to move 1 meter closer, you're moving 1 meter closer to both the subject and the background. But now the subject is 1 meter away from you, and the background is 2 meters away from you, meaning the subject is now halfway between you and the background. And then depth of field, which is how blurred the outer focus parts of a photograph look. And this depends on, firstly, how far away the background is from the plane of focus and how wide the aperture of the lens is set to. The wider the iris opening, the more blurry things look. All these combine in the idea of lens compression, because if you use a wide-angle lens to photograph a person and you want them to fill the photo, then you need to be very close to them. But this will then distort their features because, say, their nose would be proportionally much closer to the camera than their ears are. And because the aperture f number is a ratio of focal length to aperture diameter, a 20mm focal length, that's say aperture of f4, would mean the aperture diameter is about 5mm, which doesn't produce much blurring to anything before or after the plane of focus. Switching to a 200mm focal length, though, if you were to stay in exactly the same place, would basically mean the subject's nose would fill the photo, but you could utilize that narrower angle of view to move yourself much further away while still keeping them filling the frame. This means the difference in relative distance of all of their body features would be much less now, and they would look more like what we expect them to. Plus,
oops, hang on, I didn't quite get it. I think that's an excellent demonstration. Oh, hang on, maybe
their body features would be much less now, and they would look.
The comparison there, I mean, you look like two different people, really. Because you get more of the side of your face here, whereas here you don't get that. So yeah, it demonstrates the point excellently.
Yeah, that's one of the things kind of with photography, you're always taught sort of don't get very close to your subject with a wide angle lens because you just, you end up with a distorted looking face and you're better off standing, further away for exactly that reason. But they don't say use a long focal length lens for it specifically.
Well, yeah. But yeah, anyway, it explains where Flatsoid's getting it wrong, and you go on to that. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong video. Yep, that's all right.
More like what we expect them to. Plus, 200mm and f4 would mean the aperture iris diameter is now 50mm, and so would be able to produce much more blurring. But from a fixed position and with a fixed iris diameter in millimeters, the look of an image should be exactly the same at any focal length. The only difference would be how much of the scene the sensor can pick up due to the angle of view of the lens. But you could then crop in wider angle photos and produce exactly the same angle of view and thus basically exactly the same image, just at a lower resolution. Flatsoid's take from the Photography Online video, though, was that in a comparison shot between a telephoto lens versus a wide angle lens cropped in, taking the same distance away from the subject, the objects that are visible in the background of the wide angle shot aren't visible in the telephoto lens shot.
This is the 12mm from 16 meters away. This is the 200mm from 16 away. You can see the proportions are the same based on the subject, but the background in proportion to the subject has changed dramatically. You can't see the mountain anymore with the 200mm.
And so he draws the conclusion that it's because zooming in moves the background down, and so therefore what we see as a horizon isn't actually caused by the curve of Earth, but is instead us not being able to zoom in to see what's out there because everything gets pushed down as we zoom in, I think. Although,
yes, it's hilarious, isn't it? It's basically that, the whole boat's over the horizon can be brought back with a zooming, but and he's saying, oh, this is evidence for that. But, well, as we'll see in a minute, that is ridiculous. Do you want to say anything at this point?
Just like, not even like everything's contradicting themselves. Like so many people say you zoom in to bring objects back. If they've gone beyond the horizon, zooming in brings them back. And now Flatsoid's saying, but zooming in pushes everything down and away. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. Not to mention
they can if they just want to.
Well, yeah,
just want to fool people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, but the funny thing, I didn't even cover it in that video. I'm going to do it in the follow-up video. If you actually watch the Photography Online video, the one he says is from experts who know what they're talking about. It shows you, at one point, it shows you 4 images at 4 different focal lengths, and he's only got 2 of them shown, and yet the 100mm shot, you can still see the mountains perfectly fine in the background as well. But he's sort of just, kind of done the usual flirt. We'll ignore that bit, and well, this suits what I want it to show better, so we'll just go with that.
And the other thing that's a typical flirt thing is that they assume they know more than experts.
Yes.
Where do they even get that from? I mean, they've never known anything about it beforehand. He told me when I interviewed him, he was an arts major. He's a spray painter. He likes graphic design and things like that, and that takes intelligence to do that sort of thing. I'm not knocking that in any way, but it's not exactly a qualification for understanding physics.
No, and I mean the thing is, like I don't even proclaim to be an expert at it. Like I've done photography professionally for many years, but I'm not for 1 second suggesting I know more than a lot of other photographers out there. But the difference is when you turn around and say I'm not an expert in something, so I'll listen to other people versus I don't know it, but I'm not going to listen to an expert because they're saying something that I don't agree with.
It's not a logical position at all, but they think it is in their terms of logic. Anyway, just a minute left on this one, and then we'll get on to Wally's video.
Although I'm not entirely sure as to what exactly it's getting pushed down behind in order to block its view. Either way, it doesn't really matter because this has nothing to do with lenses moving objects around. This is merely a case of the photograph being taken from different heights because the photographer was hand-holding the camera and it wasn't a proper scientific experiment. They weren't being particularly precise. A point which the photographer themselves confirmed in the comments, stating the shots were taken from slightly different vantage points, a point which was highlighted to Flatzoid during a debate he was having with FTFE about it.
Just because the guy can't accept that he noticed he crouched exactly the same position. The reason he is having excuses like this, and note that crazy flat earth guy, by the way, is quoting me, guys, because
oh really? You're the crazy flat earth guy?
he's getting inundated by globe trolls asking him, why are you at the same elevation?
But Flatzoid's dismissing that as propaganda and seems to think he knows more about the circumstances of a photo than the person that actually took the photo.
And by the way, photography online is a whole bunch of experts, not just one guy. They're a team of experts. They are.
Yes, which means they know more than you do, and they're telling you you're wrong.
Carry on playing it. Just a few more seconds.
Are really good at what they do. So if you're saying they're wrong, then there's something wrong with you.
That's the best bit for me.
Out the turntables.
To which Flatzoid's response.
Okay, that's all I was going to show with this video. So, yes, it's that was hilarious. So the last one I wanted to show is probably, well, you could call it the most comprehensive flat Earth debunk you've ever done, and it's probably one of your best ever videos, I think, because of all the work that went into. You said it took 3 weeks to put it all together with Wally's help as well.
It was something like that. I'm blaming Wally for this one. He started me on it.
Yes. Well, I'm glad he went for you rather than me. Because first of all, you've got the expertise that's relevant to this. And second of all, this was a heck of a lot of work. I don't know how many views you got on this one, but I hope you got plenty.
Yeah, I think it's 80 something thousand. I think it was definitely well worth the effort.
Not bad. All right, let's have just a look at this. And again, this demonstrates how thorough you guys are.
A few weeks ago, everybody's favourite demonstrable realist, Level Earth Observer, put out this video entitled, Do We Have Three Suns?
I dispute that. He's not everyone's favourite one. Most laughable, maybe, but yes, most laughable.
No, I mean, to be fair, he is the only demonstrable realist I think anyone ever knows. I think if you Google demonstrable realist, I'm pretty sure he's the only one that turns up.
Well, actually, he was complaining that Google was black banning him, so it's all a conspiracy, of course. It's all a plot to make us paranoid.
Yeah. So it's funny when it is funny that Google is against them. You can kind of tell. I Google, if you Google like Nathan Oakley, I think my videos turn up before any of his.
And that's the way it should be. That you should see the debunk before you see the idiocy.
Yeah.
That way you don't spread misinformation.
ISS spacewalk that he claims is evidence of multiple light sources being used that proves all of the footage is fake. Now, we'll take a look at that in a second, but I need to start with a huge thank you to fellow debunker Where's Wally, who has helped so much with this video. I wasn't even aware of Elio's video until Wally'd messaged me about it, and it took us all of a few minutes to debunk the apparent multiple light sources, but Wally and I decided if we were going to make a video tackling this, we weren't just going to debunk Elio's claim about multiple light sources, we were going to absolutely destroy any notion of the ISS footage ever being faked. And between us, over the course of a few days, we trolled the internet and have done just that. We've not only debunked the multiple light sources, but we've managed to pinpoint who the astronaut is, what spacewalk this video is from, what part of Earth they are over, and at what time, correlated that against the recorded weather for that time, and found the uncut footage from multiple cameras during that spacewalk and synced them together to prove that this was not faked in a studio.
That is what do your own research means. When Fleurs say do your own research, they mean, oh, just Google it or look at a YouTube video. But
yeah, I've done my
you get it-
research. I've watched a YouTube video.
But here you've looked for all the available information that you could possibly get, and then you start thinking about, what does this mean? And that's the way you should do research.
Well, we really went down the rabbit hole with it because it started because Elio had put that video out, and Wally'd messaged me about it because he wanted my opinion about what was causing the 3 lights on the helmet. And then we set out on a mission to find the original footage to kind of disprove it. And that was where the detective, the sort of down the rabbit hole of how we're going to find it and finding all these other bits and pieces and stumbling across the other footage. And, well, hang on, I can mix all of this together. Once I'd found like 2 1-hour-long continuous videos, I was like, well, I can piece all this together and make sure it all fits.
Yeah, and you ended up with a long video. I don't want to play it all to spoil it. I just want to. The next bit's about you use your expertise in photography to explain how lighting works, which is something Fleurs never seemed to understand. So I thought I'd play this bit.
So we wanted to make this video to show the detective workflow that we went through and the results that we came up with. So first, let's take a look at Elio's video and claim.
Do we have 3 suns? According to this rare NASA footage, we do. So let's have a look. I want you to pay particular attention, yet again, like we have been doing recently, to the astronaut's helmet. And what we're going to see here is 3 suns. We can see the sun in his visor. And as he gets closer, we get to see not 1, not 2, but 3 suns reflected.
Just on a personal note, there's not a lot of, when he's got his visor up, there's not a lot of shielding from the sun. I don't know if I was an astronaut, I want the sun full in my face when you're in the vacuum of space.
I think it was a kind of a fleeting glance, really. So,
but it's a heck of a lot of radiation.
Well, yeah.
You got a good suntan, I bet.
That's 3 separate light sources. Obviously, there's not 3 suns.
He claims there are 3 light sources shining straight in the astronaut's face. This has immediate flaws, such as if we were to compare early in Elio's clip versus near the end, we can see the lighting on the solar panel remains consistent, but the lighting on the left of the frame changes significantly from flat lighting to direct sunlight and hard shadows. And we can see throughout the clip, these shadows move, meaning the relative position of the light source to the object that's casting the shadows is moving, but the light intensity across other areas of the ISS doesn't fluctuate, meaning that the light source is relatively far away from what we are seeing. Now, if we're looking at 3 separate light sources, we would see 3 distinct shadow casts from every object in the frame, which we don't see. Mr. Cheswick Music commented on Elio's video, highlighting that studios regularly use a 3-point lighting setup, which is true, but unrelated to this clip, because 3 light sources in a studio are not placed directly in front of the subject. That would just create a very flat-looking shot. 3-point lighting is used to create depth to a scene and refers to having a main light, called a key light, which is the main source of light on the subject, usually placed around 45 degrees to the side of the subject. But this will create dark shadows on the opposite side, so a less powerful light is placed on that side to fill in those shadows, appropriately named a fill light. And then a third light is placed somewhere high up behind the subject, pointing back towards them, which puts a bright strip of light around the edge of the subject to help create separation to the background. This is called a hair light. This is the same lighting setup that I'm using right now for my videos. Anyway, so 3 separate light sources doesn't fit with the lighting that we're seeing across the frame here. Secondly is the makeup of the helmet. We can see as he lifts up the sun visor, we see a double reflection on the edge of the clear visor. This is because the spacewalk helmets are multi-layered. They have a sun visor on the outside to protect when they're in direct sunlight, and then clear visors underneath for when they're working in shadow. If we look at this video clip taken inside the ISS, we can clearly see the helmet has 2 layers, which is creating 2 reflections of objects. Now, you might be thinking, hold on, the helmet produces 2 reflections, but we're seeing 3 light spots, so how does that add up? Well, it turns out we're actually seeing 4 light spots, not 3. Wally pointed out when he sent me the video, as the astronaut moves into shadow, the top spot completely disappears. But we also see the middle spot gets a lot dimmer than it was, and yet the bottom spot doesn't really change. That's because what we are seeing is the sunlight shining straight through gaps in the ISS, creating this bright strip of light, but we're also seeing a reflection of sunlight coming off the ISS itself. And we can even see this in Elio's clip. Just before the astronaut lifts up his sun visor, we catch a view of the sun itself and the light from the sun reflecting off the ISS. So
I think we'll leave it there because it's running out of time. But that is a good example of how thorough you guys go into this and the knowledge you have to bring to these videos, Dave, and the way you can debunk fools like Elio.
Yeah, the many years of doing photography's finally come useful.
Well, not to mention all the salary you've earned over the years, but yes, it's good to be able to help people in this way too, and use that knowledge for that sort of thing. So thank you so much for being. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, you broke up a little bit there. I missed what you said.
Oh, I was just saying the salary was helping you as well as it was useful to you as well.
Yes, it definitely had some benefits at the time, but it's coming to its own now.
Yes. Thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been a thrill to get to talk to you, and I hope you feel welcome to come back another time soon.
My pleasure. If I can find some time in amongst the Flurf debunks, I'll be sure to stop by.
That'd be great. All right. Thank you very much. And it's time to wrap up the show. Let me know who you'd like me to look at in the near future by leaving a comment below. I appreciate all suggestions. For tomorrow, I'll be coming back to young Kyle, the young Earth creationist who I looked at last week. I gave you a taste of him then, so tomorrow we'll get right into the bad arguments he has against atheists such as former guest of this channel, Aaron Ra. Do the YouTube things, like the stream, subscribe, click join, leave a comment. I love to read your comments. In particular, if you're one of the few who watch my videos who aren't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button below this video on your screen. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And I think that just about does it. Thanks again, Dave. There's nothing left to do but cue the corgi.
You're despicable.